Hello and welcome back to Nerd Doc. Ms. Marvel Episode 2 has arrived on Disney+, and we're here to break down the episode for you, as well as provide the songs in the episode. There will be spoilers for Ms. Marvel Episode 2. There are chapter timestamps so you can jump around as you wish, and as always, if you have any questions about the episode or Ms. Marvel in general, leave a comment below. If you're just looking for the music in Ms. Marvel Episode 2, while we can't play them here due to YouTube copyright, we have provided YouTube and Spotify links in the description below. Episode 2 starts off with a scene very similar to the high school hallway scene from the first episode. However, while Kamala was timid and shy during Episode 1, now that she has superpowers, she's gained a lot more self-confidence, which is on full display in this scene. Kamala plays with the basketball instead of shying away from it, corrects the gym teacher when he mispronounces her name, and makes her way to her locker without being hindered by the other students. She runs into Kamran in the halls and immediately falls for him. Everyone in school is talking about Zoe's Instagram and the fact that she met a real-life superhero at AvengerCon, which boosted her follower count from 100,000 up to around 500,000. The hero in question is of course Kamala, but since this was her debut as a superhero, she doesn't have a name yet. Zoe calls her Nightlight to make the meeting seem more impressive. Zoe also decides to have a party and invites Kamran, which immediately makes Kamala want to go as well. Kamala shows Bruno her powers again, which leads into a training montage. Bruno is playing what looks like New Super Lucky's Tale on his phone in the middle of the training montage, which gives Kamala the idea to use her floating platforms like steps to run through the air. During her training montage, she even makes slides in midair similar to Iceman of the X-Men. Bruno also confirms that Kamala's new power isn't actually coming from the bangle armband, but instead from within her, stating that the bangle unlocked the superhuman part of her. Kamala even asks if she's possibly Asgardian and related to Thor. As we mentioned in our Episode 1 breakdown, this may be a nod toward Ms. Marvel's Inhuman origins in the comics, but it's too soon to know if Marvel will actually go that route with the character in the MCU. At the very least, there have been multiple hints that Kamala may not be a normal human, and her powers could even be related to the Jinn. Bruno notices Arabic or Urdu writing on the bangle, and Kamala postulates that they should call her power Hard Light. Right before the training montage began, Kamala mentions that her power feels like an idea come to life. Couple these comments with the Nightlight name that Zoe gave to Kamala, and this is a fun little nod to Green Lantern of DC Comics. Green Lantern's powers are known as Hard Light, and allows a lantern to conjure anything they can imagine, almost like an idea come to life. After the training montage, we see Kamala and Nakia at their mosque. Everything you see here, from the shoes, to the wash area, to the praying, is very faithful to the Islamic culture. The men and women are separated, which causes Kamala to give Nakia a push toward potentially running for the mosque board in the upcoming election, which she eventually decides to do. Nakia realizes her shoes have been stolen, which is also a common occurrence at mosques. Kamala and her group of friends go to Zoe's party where she runs into Kamran, who Bruno is clearly jealous of. The police show up due to a noise complaint, and Kamran offers to drive everyone home in his uncle's Porsche Boxer. He also offers to help Kamala learn to drive as they discuss how much they like Sweatshop Boys and Bollywood movies, even name-dropping SRK, also known as Shah Rukh Khan, a popular Indian actor. One of his most popular films is known as DDLJ, which is also directly referenced during the conversation. Kamran drops the group off at Circle Q, and he gives Kamala his phone number while also getting Bruno's name wrong, calling him Brian. Kamran texts Kamala later that night to offer her a driving lesson on Monday. Fast forward to Monday at school, and Kamala's nose begins to glow with her powers. She's not yet able to fully control her powers, which causes little issues like this to occur. Kamala rushes to the bathroom to avoid anyone seeing her nose. Nakia catches up to Kamala in the bathroom, and they have a conversation about how everything is changing so rapidly. In the comics, Nakia is a social activist, and that's shown in the series with her running for the mosque board, and in the conversation here with Nakia talking about her hijab head covering and mentioning the girlies, which could be a subtle nod to Nakia being a lesbian or bi. In the comics, Zoe develops a huge crush on Nakia, but they never become a couple. Bruno meets with Mr. Wilson, the school guidance counselor, who informs Bruno that he was accepted into the early immersion program at Caltech. If he accepts, he will have to leave Kamala and head out to Caltech next semester, which makes him hesitant due to his long-standing crush on her. In what may be an inadvertent Easter egg, Bruno's appearance in this episode is very similar to that of Marty McFly from the first Back to the Future film. Mr. Wilson also makes a reference to Meryl Streep's role in The Devil Wears Prada in an attempt to convince Bruno to accept the Caltech offer, implying that it's a pivotal point in his life. After school, Kamala heads out to meet Kamran for her driving lesson, kind of dissing Bruno in the process. She does ask if Bruno would like to go to Eid with her, which is an Islamic holiday celebration. After the driving lesson, Kamala and Kamran talk about Bollywood movies again, name-dropping Kingo from The Eternals, who is a Bollywood star. Kamran even mentions that his mother has a crush on Kingo Sr., which is actually still just Kingo since he's an Eternal and doesn't age. Later that night at dinner, we learn that Kamala's father's family is from Karachi, the largest city in Pakistan, and that Kamala's mother's family moved to Karachi after the partition. The Partition of India was a 1947 divide that turned British India into what we know today as India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and also led to a civil war. It's considered one of the largest refugee crises in history, as it displaced as many as 20 million people along religious lines, with a lot of violence and hostility. Kamala's father tells him about a story from her mother's side. Kamala's grandmother was just a child traveling with Kamala's great-grandparents. They all had to get on the last train out of the city, and Kamala's grandmother was separated from her parents. Somehow the child managed to get back on the train, claiming she followed a trail of stars. Kamala's great-grandmother, Aisha, was the original owner of the bangle that gave Kamala her powers. She was the one who created the trail of stars and led Kamala's grandmother back to the train. No one knows what happened to Aisha as she disappeared that same night. Right after hearing the story, Kamala's armband starts to glow as she's shown a vision of the events, hearing Aisha's voice. Kamala passes out, which causes her brother to say it's the evil eye. This is referring to the belief that certain people have the power to cause harm just by looking at them. Later that night, Kamala calls her grandmother to ask her about the bangle and her great-grandmother Aisha. Unfortunately, she doesn't learn much other than the fact that the bangle belonged to Aisha. The next day, Kamala asks her mother about Aisha, to which she has a negative reaction, saying that Aisha brought shame to their entire family. The family goes to the Eid celebration, where we see Nakia campaigning for the mosque board. Nakia mentions having to go after her white whale, Kamala's father, which is a reference to the novel Moby Dick. Nakia needs Kamala's father's vote in order to have a decent chance at winning the board spot. If she doesn't get it, she's probably not going to win. Zoe has been taken into custody by Damage Control so they can question her about Nightlight, Kamala. Agent Cleary implies that the enhanced individual tried to kill her, to which Nakia tries to correct him. This was all a ploy to figure out how much Zoe knows about the mystery superhero. They figure out the hero is of South Asian descent and offhandedly mention that the FBI is already surveying Mase, a reference to the real world where there's a negative bias toward Islamic people being terrorists. Back at the Eid celebration, Kamala is talking to the Illumin-Aunties. This is obviously a direct reference to the Illuminati who we just saw in Multiverse of Madness. The Illumin-Aunties is a group of elderly women who have a lot of information about all things in the mosque community. Kamala asks them about Aisha, and they give her an answer similar to what her mother said, that Aisha brought shame to the family. They said she was a snake and put a curse on anything she's touched. They even mentioned she had affairs and may have even killed a man during the partition. All of these rumors were likely due to Aisha having to sneak around and hide her abilities from everyone else. Shortly after, a young boy climbs up on top of a nearby building to get a good photo. He ends up slipping and almost falls to his death, hanging onto a curtain for dear life. During the commotion, there's a lot of idle chatter, with one person sounding like he says, "just like the river." It's hard to make out, but if that is what he said, it's potentially a reference to the Hudson River, which is a subtle nod to the comics where Zoe fell into the river and ended up being the first person Ms. Marvel ever saved. Even in the series, Zoe was still the first person Kamala saved when she was in trouble at AvengerCon. Kamala changes into her Captain Marvel cosplay and uses her powers to save the boy in a somewhat sloppy manner since she's still new to the whole superhero thing. Someone recognizes her as Nightlight, who is obviously a follower of Zoe's Instagram. In the middle of saving the child, Kamala sees another vision of Aisha calling out to her with an extended hand. This causes her to lose focus as the child nearly falls to his death. Kamala manages to keep him from dying, but he still falls hard enough to injure his ankle. As the episode ends, Kamala runs away into a nearby alley where Damage Control corners her with several drones. She ends up falling behind a car, and Kamran drives in with perfect timing to save her. Kamran's mother is in the back seat and says that she's been waiting a very long time to meet her. Now in the comics, Kamran is also an Inhuman with powers, but his mother is named Bushra and has no real significance when it comes to Kamala and her powers. We don't yet know if Kamran will get powers in the series as well, but his mother here is named Najma, which is a change from the comics. Najma seems to have a keen interest in Kamala, and the setup at the end of the episode seems to indicate Kamran and his mother are hiding something. Since Kamran is an ally to Ms. Marvel in the comics, our best guess is that he's also an ally in the series, whether he has powers or not. In that scenario, his mother is very likely an ally as well. Najma may have a connection to Kamala's family and even know more about Aisha and the Bangles. It's even possible that the person Aisha killed was to protect a relative of Najma. Either way, we'll have to wait until at least the next episode to get a better idea of their intentions. That wraps up our coverage of Ms. Marvel Episode 2. Check back with us next week as we'll have coverage of Episode 3. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves Ms. Marvel.